She crossed the sea as a teenage bride, a Spanish princess, fierce and devout, raised to rule. But in the shadowed halls of English power, Catherine of Aragon would become more than just a queen. She would become a symbol of loyalty, faith, and unbroken will in the face of the greatest betrayal in Tudor history. This is not merely a tale of marriage and monarchy. This is the story of a woman who defied kings, outlasted rivals, and whose legacy reshaped the soul of England forever. Welcome to the fascinating story of Catherine of Aragon, the first wife of Henry VIII. Clapperboard Part 1. The Spanish Rose Blooms in England. Born in 1485, the same year the Wars of the Roses ended, Catherine was the youngest daughter of Spain's powerful Catholic monarchs, Queen Isabella of Castile and King Ferdinand of Aragon. From birth, she was destined to forge alliances, not just through diplomacy but through marriage. England was the chosen realm, and Prince Arthur, the eldest son of Henry VII, was to be her husband. At just 15, Catherine stepped onto English soil, a regal ambassador of Spain, fluent in Latin, schooled in philosophy, theology, and statecraft. Her arrival was met with grandeur and hope. She was seen not just as a bride, but as a bridge between two kingdoms. The marriage to Arthur, however, was short-lived. Within months, Arthur died, leaving Catherine a widow in a foreign land, uncertain of her future. Yet she refused to return home. Whether by political strategy or divine belief, she remained, cloaked in mourning but not defeated. Clapperboard Part 2. Queen at Last, Love and Politics with Henry VIII. Years passed in limbo. But in 1509 fate turned. Henry VII died and the youthful, athletic and charismatic Prince Henry ascended the throne. At 18 he married Catherine, now 23. The people rejoiced. She was crowned Queen of England beside him, her face radiant with triumph, her faith unshaken. Catherine's early years as queen were marked by dignity, wisdom and resilience. She served as regent when Henry went to war and even led England during the Battle of Flodden in 1513, where the Scottish king was slain. She proved herself not just as consort, but as a leader. But beneath the splendor, sorrow brewed. She gave birth to several children, yet only one survived. Mary, later to become Queen Mary I. The pressure to produce a male heir weighed heavily. Court whispers grew louder. And Henry, increasingly restless, turned to other women and, more perilously, to dangerous thoughts. Clapperboard Part 3. The King's Great Matter, a Queen's Public Trial. By the late 1520s, Catherine's greatest test began. Henry had fallen deeply in love with Anne Boleyn. Obsessed with securing a male heir and freeing himself from what he now called a curse, Henry sought an annulment. Catherine refused. She stood before the court and declared boldly, "I am the true and lawful wife of the king." Her dignity stunned Europe. Even when abandoned, even as Anne Boleyn paraded at court, Catherine clung to her title and her belief in divine justice. Popes hesitated. Cardinals debated. But Henry's will proved stronger than the Church's traditions. In 1533 Henry married Anne. Catherine was banished from court, forced to live in isolation. Yet she remained queen in her heart, and in the hearts of many in England. Clapperboard Part 4. The Lonely Lioness, Exile, Legacy and Unbroken Faith. Stripped of her crown, her jewels and her status, Catherine endured poverty and illness in her final years. But never once did she acknowledge the annulment. She signed her letters as Catherine the Queen, until her death in 1536. On her deathbed she wrote to Henry, "Mine eyes desire thee above all things. Farewell." Even then, her love for him had not withered, but neither had her pride. Part 5. Mary Tudor, the daughter of the betrayed queen. As the bells tolled for Catherine in January 1536, her daughter Mary was still kept at a distance, isolated, declared illegitimate, and stripped of the title princess. Yet she had inherited more than Catherine's royal blood. She carried her mother's fierce devotion, sharp intellect and unwavering belief in divine justice. Mary had grown up under siege, emotionally and politically. Once the cherished only child of the English crown, she was reduced to a lady-in-waiting to her own infant half-sister, Elizabeth. Henry VIII's marriage to Anne Boleyn and his break with Rome had cost Mary everything, her title, her home and her father's affection. But like her mother, Mary refused to renounce her legitimacy. She remained loyal to her Catholic faith and clung to the memory of the woman who had taught her to endure with grace. In her mind, she was still the rightful heir, the true princess of England. Anne Boleyn, however, was now queen. Anne saw Mary not just as a threat, but as a symbol of defiance. The new queen tried to have Mary submit and acknowledge Anne's status as Henry's wife. Mary refused. Letters from Catherine to Mary, smuggled during their separation, were filled with instructions: stand firm. Do not yield to them. Catherine may have died, but her voice still echoed. Clapperboard Part 6. The Fall of Anne Boleyn, a Shift in Power. Fate is nothing if not ironic. Just months after Catherine's death, Anne Boleyn too would fall. In May 1536, accused of adultery and treason, she was executed at the Tower of London. Her fall marked the end of Henry's infatuation and the start of a new chapter. With Anne gone, Mary's position shifted. Jane Seymour, Henry's third wife, urged reconciliation. Henry, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps calculation, offered Mary the chance to return to court, if she acknowledged her father as the supreme head of the church and her own illegitimacy. The choice tore at Mary's soul. After years of solitude, fear, and emotional torment, she relented, but not with joy. It was a bitter compromise that would haunt her. Yet her return to court meant survival. And survival for Mary was a strategic step toward reclaiming her mother's honor. Clapperboard Part 7. The Shadow of Catherine, a Queen Rises. The years that followed were a tumult of royal births, deaths, and power plays. Henry's final 3 marriages bore him a long-awaited son, Edward VI, and yet the realm remained fragile. Mary, now a woman in her 30s, watched from the sidelines, ever the cautious observer. Her mother's fate remained a guiding force. Her Catholicism, once politically inconvenient, would soon become the heart of her mission. When Henry died in 1547, the throne passed to Edward VI, a Protestant boy king. Mary once again was marginalized, but she did not flee. She waited. In 1553, Edward died. And then England turned. A faction tried to place Lady Jane Grey, another Protestant, on the throne. But Mary, daughter of Catherine of Aragon, moved swiftly. Riding through the countryside, she rallied support not as a Tudor, but as the legitimate daughter of the true queen. Her cry was not merely political. It was a cry of faith, of history, of vengeance and justice long denied. England rose with her. In July 1553, Mary Tudor entered London in triumph. For the first time in English history, a woman ruled in her own right. And Catherine's legacy reigned at last. Part 8. Mary I, the Burning Queen. Mary Tudor ascended the throne with immense public support, greeted with ringing bells and processions of loyal subjects who remembered the injustice done to her and to Catherine of Aragon. For a moment the old faith breathed again. The daughter of Spain, the daughter of Rome, was now Queen of England. But Mary's triumph carried a heavy burden. She was the first woman to rule England in her own name, not as the wife of a king, not as a consort, but as a monarch. Many still doubted a woman's ability to rule. The court watched. The nobility whispered. And abroad, Catholic Europe celebrated while Protestant reformers braced for backlash. At the heart of her reign burned a mission: to restore the Catholic Church in England. Mary believed this wasn't just her royal duty, it was her divine calling. Her mother's exile, her own suffering, the schism with Rome, all of it demanded reparation. And so, the Marian persecutions began. Clapperboard Part 9. The Fires of Conscience, a Legacy in Flames. Under Mary's reign, nearly 300 Protestants were burned at the stake for heresy. Among them were bishops, preachers, even pregnant women. These executions, conducted publicly, were meant to cleanse the soul of the nation. But they instead scarred its memory. Mary saw herself as a redeemer, restoring Catholic order, fulfilling her mother's spiritual legacy. But to her subjects the fires were terrifying. The people who once cheered her entrance into London now feared her justice. The name Bloody Mary would not come during her life, but it would never leave her legacy. Still, Mary believed she acted in righteousness. She prayed. She fasted. She sought no earthly vengeance, only the salvation of England's soul. Yet the harder she tried to reverse the tide of reform, the more the current of Protestantism pulled forward. Even her deeply controversial marriage, to Philip II of Spain, was meant to cement Catholic unity. But it only fueled resentment. The people feared foreign domination. Parliament resisted. Her marriage brought no heir, only loneliness. Like her mother, Mary would die without a son. Clapperboard Part 10. Death without victory, a crown without an heir. By 1558, Mary was ill, physically exhausted and emotionally broken. Her body failed her just as it had her mother. No child came. Her husband, Philip, spent more time abroad than in England. The court, divided and anxious, awaited her final breath. In her final days she asked that her heart be buried beside her mother. She died at the age of 42. The crown passed to her half-sister, Elizabeth, the Protestant daughter of Anne Boleyn. England turned again. Clapperboard Part 11, Two Queens, One Ghost. As Elizabeth I rose to power, the kingdom shifted away from Rome forever. The new queen reimagined England's identity. The memory of Mary I, drenched in blood and regret, was quickly pushed aside. But Catherine of Aragon's legacy did not die with her daughter. In truth, it shaped both of Henry VIII's daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. One ruled by faith, the other by cunning. One ruled to restore, the other to redefine. Catherine's shadow loomed behind them both. She had died rejected, betrayed, and alone. But through her, the first queen regnant ruled. Through her, a daughter dared to defy a king. Through her, the question of what makes a queen was asked, and answered. Elizabeth ascended the throne in 1558, her golden hair shimmering beneath a grey English sky, the daughter of Anne Boleyn and the man who had shattered the Catholic world for her mother's sake. But Elizabeth, though Protestant, was no stranger to peril. Like Mary, she had lived much of her youth in fear, of betrayal, of imprisonment, of execution. She had survived her sister's suspicion, political plots, and the memory of her mother's tragic fall. Now she wore the crown, but she wore it with caution. Elizabeth ruled for 45 years. Her reign, known as the Elizabethan era, was marked by cultural flourishing, global exploration, and the consolidation of Protestantism. But it was also marked by loneliness. Like her mother, she knew what it meant to be cast aside. Like her sister, she knew what it meant to rule without a husband, to carry the burdens of state alone. She never married, famously declaring herself wed to her people. In truth, she had seen too closely what marriage had cost the women before her. Catherine's unbreakable loyalty and Boleyn's ambition, Mary's tragic love, each served as a warning carved into her soul. Elizabeth became the final chapter of the Tudor dynasty, a woman who inherited the strengths of the queens who came before her and transcended them. Though she often avoided mentioning Mary or Catherine publicly, their struggles shaped her policies, her resilience, her very throne. Clapperboard Epilogue, A Queen Remembered. Catherine of Aragon died with her titles stripped, her legacy bruised, and her love betrayed. But she never bowed. She never relinquished her belief in her marriage, her daughter, or her God. And in that she became immortal. She gave England its first true queen regnant. She birthed Mary who, despite tragedy, proved that a woman could wield the sword of state. She haunted Elizabeth, whose legendary reign bore the scars and strength of Catherine's saga. Catherine of Aragon began as a Spanish princess, destined for alliance. She died as a discarded wife. But history remembers her as something greater. A queen forged by fire. A mother shaped by loss. A woman who stood against a king and altered a kingdom forever. This was the story of Catherine of Aragon, the betrayed queen, the lioness of England. But her story lives not in her death, but in the legacy she left behind. A story of power, pain, and undying dignity. Belle, if you were captivated by this tale, don't forget to subscribe to Behind Every Face for more powerful stories of the women and men who changed history. Leave a comment below. Was Catherine a martyr of love or a queen of iron will? White heavy checkmark. Next episode, Anne Boleyn, the queen who dared too much. Film projector. Also watch Mary I, England's forgotten queen.